how we think about being connected to the internet is beyond the smartphone. I think that's a myth that we're also always addressing. It's not enough to have your smartphone as your only point of entry into the internet or using it, right? Like, can you imagine filling out a job application exclusively on your smartphone, or filling out college applications, which we've encountered with folks that we've served, like students needing to fill out their college application on their smartphone because they didn't have a computer or internet at home to support that.
Hi there and welcome to the show. I'm Michaela Pereira, your host. Thanks so much for joining me. If you're watching or listening to this program, you have technology to thank for that. It's hard to imagine in this seemingly ever connected world in 2024 what we would do without access to the internet. But it's a reality for many people across the country, unable to count on or even access reliable, affordable internet connection. My guest today is on the front line of the effort to close the digital divide. Norma Fernandez is the CEO of EveryoneOn. EveryoneOn connects families in underserved communities to affordable internet service and computers, as well as offering them training. Norma, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for talking to me here in Los Angeles.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me, Michaela. It's a real privilege and opportunity to be speaking to you today.
Well, it's kind of fun because you grew up watching the shows that I was on here in Los Angeles, and the fact that you and I get to spend some time talking about something that matters to both of us is kind of amazing. Some people might be surprised to think that we haven't made more headway in the digital divide. We all remember the news articles and the coverage years ago about how important it was to close that digital divide. How come we haven't made any advancements, or at least significant ones?
Again, thank you so much for raising this issue, one that we don't talk about extensively. And EveryoneOn is a national organization, but we're based here in Los Angeles, and we do tons of work making sure that we're connecting people to affordable internet options, affordable computers, and most importantly, also making sure that we're equipping them with the digital skills needed to really harness the power of the internet. And you're right, we haven't fully addressed this, and there are a number of reasons why. The digital divide has existed for decades now. And I will proudly say that California is really ahead of the curve and has been ahead of the curve.
All right, California.
Yes, absolutely. It's been ahead of the curve in terms of addressing it through multiple approaches. One of the reasons why on a national level, and again, this is an issue that affects communities across the nation, not just in Los Angeles, not just in California, but really across the nation. And what we see is that unfortunately, communities, low income, underserved communities are disproportionately affected, as are rural communities, as you can imagine, because of the lack of robust infrastructure that is needed to make sure they have high speed. So I'm going to just list off a few reasons why we still have a digital divide. One is affordability. The average cost or medium cost of internet service is about $75 a month. And that's based on an analysis by Consumer Reports back in November 2022.
And that can just be $75 too much for a lot of families if you're living on or below the poverty level.
Absolutely. EveryoneOn conducted a national research in 2023, and what we found is households who make $50,000 or less, of those that we surveyed, 46% find it very difficult to include the internet bill into their budget. And we all know we're paying, anywhere from $60 to $80, sometimes $90 a month. So affordability is an issue. Two is just a lack of robust infrastructure. And again, this also affects rural communities where we may have infrastructure, but especially in severely underserved communities, rural communities, sometimes that infrastructure is not robust enough to provide high-speed internet service. So actually right now, across the country, states are getting ready to leverage federal funding that came out of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, if you recall that, investment back in 22 to leverage to continue to build out the infrastructure that's needed.
So there's plans. So I want to make sure we sort of talk through this stuff. I know you're like a horse galloping towards the stable because this is a passion point for you, right? This is something that matters to you because this was your family. You came from, you grew up in a home with parents that had immigrated here from Mexico. You know that in your community, there are folks that are struggling with this very issue. This is deeply personal for you, Norma.
It is, yes. And you're right. I grew up in a household that we did not have internet access, right? And when we did, it was, you remember those AOL CDs that
Man, do I remember that.
were mailed to one's home. And
Yeah.
that's how we connected. And, that dial up sound that none of us will
It
ever
is
forget.
forever etched in your memory, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it is personal, right? I come from a family and a community where resources were lacking. And I know that as transformative as the internet is, right? It's the most powerful communications tool in the world.
This is the thing. It's not like folks are just needing it to play, Call of Duty. We're talking about all of the healthcare, job opportunities. We're talking about access to financial information. Every aspect of our lives now has an internet connection.
Yes. And when you think about the access to information, right? Like all the information we're consuming today is not only powered by the internet, but also informed by those users, right? And so, there's been a lot of discussion around misinformation. And the role of now artificial intelligence in producing content. And so we have people that are still missing even the tool at home, let alone the ability to be able to navigate the internet in a safe way so that they could discern for themselves, right, how they're going to use their resources.
I can imagine for you when you hear these conversations about AI and such, you're probably like, "That's all well and good, but let's just get some people online first, right? Like, let's we're getting ahead of ourselves. There's some people over here that just need very basic web connection and digital training, so they can access and be part of the job market and compete for these things that are moving so fast."
Absolutely. I like to use the term, let's take it back to the basics. And we know that a lot of folks, especially mayors, when they run for local office, they're like, let's go back to the basics. This is exactly it. Let's go back to the basics. Broadband, the internet is infrastructure, it's used like a utility.
Is as important as roads or access to clean water or electricity. I mean, it should be a fundamental human right.
Absolutely. And when we also think about the economic impacts and implication when we don't have people connected, that is significant. I'll share a quick fact. The National Skills Coalition did a recent study to assess what is the impact, the economic benefits, if you will, of a digital skill for a worker. And what they found is that when a worker goes from a non digital skill job to using at least one digital skill in their job, their pay goes up by 23%. And when they secure a job that requires and they're using at least three digital skills, their pay raise can go up to 45%.
How do you typify a digital skill? Break it down for people so they understand exactly what you mean.
So email using Google Drive or Microsoft Office, creating a spreadsheet, creating a presentation deck. Those are all various digital skills. And most importantly, I think is like the comfort, feeling comfortable with using the internet and also comfortable with using emerging technologies, right? Many of us enter the workforce just needing to use Outlook. That was me. I was like 17 years old when I started my job at a nonprofit organization, and all I needed to do was use Outlook and some Microsoft applications. Now we have so many other applications and softwares that have developed, and so we need to keep pace with that.
Because otherwise you are left behind. That's the problem, is when we talk about disenfranchised communities, of under-resourced communities, it's that fact that they are getting left behind when these kinds of these advancements are coming along and things move so fast. Look at how much things have changed in the last 5 years. You and I wouldn't have been talking remotely, recording a show, a podcast, talking to one another over the internet even 5 years ago as fluidly as we do today, right? Things have moved at a really quick pace. So everyone on doing the work that you're doing, and I think you guys have been able to, correct me if I'm wrong, 400,000 people across the US have now been connected to broadband because of the work you're doing. Is that number correct?
That number is actually under my tenure. I became CEO of Everyone On in late 2019, right before the pandemic. But overall, since the inception of Everyone On, and it was founded in 2012, so way before the pandemic, we were literally, I say we were literally jumping up and down trying to bring attention to this issue, but we've been working on it for over a decade now. And so over a decade, we have helped connect over 1 million people across the country. And certainly a significant number have been connected in the last few years because of the pandemic, as you
Sure.
can imagine.
We know how much it was worsened, how the gap was
Yes.
worsened, and especially with all the kids learning from home or trying to learn from home and accessing their education. Given what you're doing, you're dealing with communities in urban areas, you're dealing with communities in rural areas. I imagine the services look different. The training centers, the help you are providing, how you reach those people is different. How do you manage to cover such a large area?
Sure. Well, I like to say we have a very lean but mighty team spread out across the country where we're able to employ our model. And that's actually part of the magic here and part of the recipe as well, that our model entails working in collaboration with diverse organizations, other nonprofits, libraries, public housing agencies, schools in particular are part of our model. So how we're able to reach all those people is because we work in partnership with these organizations who have direct access to these communities that we serve.
Yeah, and the fact is partnerships are everything when you're a nonprofit, aren't they?
They are. I mean, it really is, like I said, it's part of the magic, right? They make our work possible. And, these organizations that we partner with also see the need, right? They understand because, for example, schools, we work with a lot of parent centers and community centers that are based in schools, and they see the immediate need. They see that parents who have kids in K through 12, for example, are trying to learn how to use email so that they could connect with their child's teacher or the principal. They're trying to learn what the portal is like so that they could stay up to date with the information that the school is sending home. And so because they have that direct understanding and observation of what's happening, they understand the need to work in collaboration with organizations like ours that are bringing these services to the parents that they serve.
And I imagine you're looking at a multi-generational group, your demographic too, right? Because you have at the upper end seniors who are increasingly, getting left behind by technology. And if you are, living with meager means on a fixed income and don't have connection, that's how, healthcare portals, that's how they're making appointments for doctors. That's how they're getting information about their social security. I mean, it's a real barrier to getting the resources you need.
Yep. And I have a personal story to share about that. Actually, my mom lives in El Sereno here in Los Angeles. She is, by all accounts, considered low income. My dad has passed away, and she's in her 80s. And during the pandemic, her doctor didn't want to see her in person. He wanted to protect her, right, from coming into a clinic or a hospital if it wasn't necessary. And so he told her, I could only see you via the computer. And of course, she was like, what? Like, didn't have a computer at home, had internet, but didn't know how to use it. And, given the position and organization that I'm with, of course, I was able to help her. And I helped my brother to help her get onto her appointment using a computer that we were able to purchase.
Do you find that when there are sort of these larger conversations about the digital divide, oftentimes the faces of the very people who are in that divide are forgotten? Do you find that that's something that Everyone On has to do, is sort of say, hey, these are real living, breathing people in these communities?
I'm glad that you raised this because I think now that we're past the height of the pandemic, folks, I think in general, think now, well, we addressed it, right?
We're back to normal, right?
We're back to normal. Schools sent hotspots, that they sent computers back home. The federal government is funding some of these initiatives. So they think that we're past it, that we've addressed it, and that no one is unconnected. And yet we know there are at least 18 million households across the country that still lack connectivity for all those reasons that I mentioned. And so,
Did
yes.
you say 18 million?
Yes, 18 million households.
That's a sobering statistic.
It is. It is sobering. And, you multiply that by let's say the average household number, which is, I think, like 2.6 2.6 people per household, right? And so that number obviously doubles in terms of actual people not connected to the internet. And how we think about being connected to the internet is beyond the smartphone. I think that's a myth that we're also always addressing. It's not enough to have your smartphone as your only point of entry into the internet or using it, right? Like, can you imagine filling out a job application exclusively on your smartphone, or filling out college applications, which we've encountered with folks that we've served, like students needing to fill out their college application on their smartphone because they didn't have a computer or internet at home to support that.
So what does this look like in communities? Is everyone on going home to home? Are you creating resource centers where people can come to? What does it look like out in the community?
So, to learn about low cost internet options, the majority of people find out about it through our what we call our offer locator tool, which is on our website, EveryoneOn.org. Anyone could access it. People enter their zip code and they find low cost options, and then we help connect them to, let's say, the AT&Ts of the world or Spectrums of the world, so that they could sign up for their service. But of course, even though that's online, we recognize there are people offline that can't find that resource. So how it looks like beyond access to our offer locator tool is really doing enrollment events in communities. So we go out to schools, to libraries, to public housing agencies where the need is, to introduce these resources to community members and help them sign up. We also have a hotline where people could call in, and we do a lot of outreach through these organizations, and they also help spread the word. So we do have folks using our hotline to find out. For the trainings, we kicked off our trainings actually a little bit before the pandemic. It was a direction that we were already moving into because we recognized that it wasn't enough to connect people to the internet or donate computers. We need to also provide trainings.
Show them how to use it. Yeah.
Exactly, so that they know how to navigate it. So we started doing trainings, pandemic hit, and we could no longer offer them in person, right, for safety purposes. So we quickly developed a model where we were virtually delivering the trainings, and it was quite the feat to try to figure out how do we get devices into El Paso, for example, or out to Tampa or to Milwaukee, where we didn't have a presence at the time. But we worked again in collaboration with organizations who helped us distribute the devices. And then we had our instructors virtually deliver the training or the curriculum through Zoom or through Google Meet. And so we figured out a method. And now we've transitioned to offering it in person because folks were clamoring for in-person
Of
trainings.
course. What do you hear from them? What do they tell you?
So I heard things like, they understood the power of the internet and they wanted to really master it. They wanted to help others, in particular their kids. So those of them that were moms wanted to be in a better position to help their kids with remote learning. And something that I wasn't expecting and was really striking was they wanted a sense of independence. The majority of the women in the interviews and surveys shared that they felt dependent and embarrassed that they needed to ask their younger kids mostly to help them open email, how to use Zoom. So it was those three things that were driving their interests. They wanted to, learn something new because they recognize the internet is powerful. They wanted to help others, in particular the kids, and they wanted a sense of independence and not feel embarrassed when asking their kids to help them with things like email.
That's really powerful. And it shows you that you guys are spot on in understanding that there's more to this digital divide. There's complexities, there's nuances, all wrapped up in it. It is about not being left behind. It is about leveling the playing field, right? Having equal access to resources and information and being able to make decisions, informed decisions about yourself. It's about being able to, what are the kids saying? Leveling up, right? It is powerful. Norma, I kind of want to know more about what led you to this work, because I know you mentioned before that it's deeply personal. You mentioned you're a child of immigrants. You could have gone 1,000 different directions in your career, yet here you are, CEO of EveryoneOn. What I sense, it probably wasn't a straight line here for you.
It wasn't. And when I think back up to my childhood, I grew up in the MacArthur Park, Westlake area of Los Angeles. And if you know that part of LA, at that time in the 80s and 90s, wasn't the safest place. And yet I found that, my parents, my neighbors, my classmates' parents were hardworking, they were dedicated, they just wanted a life to provide, a quality life to provide to their kids, including myself. And I started volunteering very early in my teenage years at local organizations and doing community cleanups, attending neighborhood council meetings, doing holiday giveaways. And I saw the same thing, right? Like folks that were eager to work hard, that cared about their community, but just didn't have the resources needed to go somewhere else, right?
And you clearly had a sense that something could change, that there was something that was out of balance here, that these hardworking people deserve to have a shot at more and deserve to have access. Because your entire career has been about doing that. You've been community spirited, socially active. Social justice has been at the heart of a lot of what you have done. It really is no surprise that you would end up doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, it really has been my thread, right? For me, it's always about access to information, tools, and resources. And I say that all the time because that's really what it is: information, resources, tools, so that folks could do what they want with their lives. But we
Freedom,
need to,
right? I mean, it basically translates to freedom. If you have those three
exactly.
things, you get to make choices.
Yes. And we need to ensure that that access to freedom is there for everybody.
Everybody.
We don't think that your zip code or your income or where you're born or to whom you're born to should dictate the rest of your life, but it does. And so we need to make sure, to use your term, we level the playing field for everyone so that everyone has equal access. I don't take for granted also that I've had the opportunity to go to community college, to transfer to a wonderful institution, UCLA, where I got to earn my master's and my master's. Right, don't take that opportunity for granted, and I want to make sure that. Because I was supported along the way, that I could provide that also to folks like me.
That's the thing right there. That's that juicy stuff. Is we get here standing on the shoulders of those that came before us, right? With the help, with the leadership, with the guidance and love of those people. So it's our turn to do the same thing, and you're doing it on a broad level, right? You're doing it in a big way. Norma, you are a shiro. You touch me. I'm really touched by the work you're doing. How can people that are listening or watching, what can they do? What do you want them to either know or do? How can they join the effort?
Sure. I would love to invite people to visit our website, EveryoneOn.org, where you could find tons of information about our work and why this is important. And I do want to draw attention to that research project that I mentioned a few minutes ago, because it really gets back to your question about what are the stories of people? Why are they left behind, and what's needed to continue to support their ability to really harness the power of the internet. And it's a beautiful report that just captures the experiences of women in particular. So definitely want to draw people to our website to look at that particular research, but also our social media channels. I think, for us, it's about a big part of this is about awareness, making sure that others are aware about what's going on, why this is important, who it's impacting, and the implications of still having a digital divide, especially as we move into what feels like a new era of technology, right? With so many new tools like artificial intelligence. How do we make sure that the tool is something that we're all going to use, that's going to benefit us universally? So definitely want to draw people's attention to that, and for the purposes of just bringing awareness on the issue. And we're a nonprofit. We always are.
We take your money.
Yes, we will take your money. We will help make sure that it goes to amazing, impactful programs like the ones that we provide, and folks can make donations. They could, refer us to foundations or corporations that they work with that may provide grants and employee matching programs, for example.
I love it. Norma, they got the right lady at the helm. It's been such a delight to speak with you, and I know you are making your parents immensely proud. Thank you so much for joining us to highlight the still existing need to bridge this divide, this digital divide. Norma Fernandez, CEO of EveryoneOn. Be sure to check them out on Instagram and, of course, their website, everyoneon.org. Thank you so much, Norma. Pleasure to meet you. And to all of you listening or watching, thanks for joining us. I hope you learned a lot. I know I sure did. And we will catch you next time.